You've had a hibiscus at home for 3 years. You water it. You take care of it. Maybe you even talk to it. But the flowers never come. Meanwhile, your neighbor pulls out her phone and shows you a photo. Her hibiscus has exploded with bright crimson flowers. There it stands on the windowsill, absolutely covered in blooms, like a holiday Christmas tree. She doesn't even know what she's doing right. Do you know what she's doing? I'll tell you honestly, in that moment you're standing at the threshold of one of the most fascinating mysteries of indoor gardening. Because hibiscus doesn't bloom by accident. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's a very specific puzzle, and the answer to it can completely change how you look at plant care. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will explain why your hibiscus stays silent while your neighbor sings. Let's start with the fact that most people don't even suspect how rare hibiscus blooming can be in home conditions. When you walk into a flower shop and see a hibiscus in a pot, completely covered with flowers, you think that's the plant's normal state. You think, I'll buy one just like that, and I'll have beauty. But then the first week passes, then the second, then a month. The flowers fall off. New ones don't appear, and the plant transforms into just a green bush. Owners start wondering, maybe I'm watering it wrong? Maybe it doesn't get enough light? Maybe it's just a temperamental variety? Actually, this happens because the flowering hibiscus you saw in the shop was grown under very special conditions. Conditions that are almost impossible to recreate in a regular apartment. Here's an interesting statistic for you. Out of 100 people who buy hibiscus as a houseplant, only 15 to 20 ever see it bloom. The other 80 give up. They say, well, this just isn't my plant. Maybe I'm just not good at growing it. But the problem isn't with them. The problem is that in our culture, we simply don't talk about what hibiscus actually needs. This is one of the main secrets that every experienced gardener keeps. And today I'm going to reveal it to you. There are countless myths surrounding hibiscus. One of the most common. Supposedly you need to water this plant with ice-cold water to wake it up and make it bloom. Another myth says hibiscus will flower if you yell at it or, conversely, talk to it very loudly. A third claims that if you prune the plant in a certain way, it will definitely bloom. All these methods get passed around from person to person, people try them, nothing works, and they convince themselves that hibiscus is an ungrateful plant. But actually, it's just noise. White noise that obscures the truth from us. And the truth, as it turns out, is much simpler and at the same time much more complex than any of these myths. Let's go back in history. Hibiscus isn't just a plant. It's a character that has passed through centuries, across continents, through different cultures and thousands of families. This plant's homeland is in Asia, specifically in India and the Malay archipelago. There, in its natural environment, hibiscus isn't some timid flower. It's a large shrub that can grow up to 3 meters tall and literally bursts with flowers. During the summer season, it blooms constantly, every single day. Unopened buds wait their turn, like in a theater on premiere day. Every morning new flowers open, every evening they wilt. That's their life in the tropics. The plant lives in conditions that are hot, humid, with plenty of sunshine and warm nights. This is nothing like our apartment. Europeans first encountered hibiscus during the Age of Discovery. Traders, navigators, colonists brought this plant into their homes as an exotic trophy. Over time, hibiscus became a symbol of luxury and exoticism. During the Victorian era, every self-respecting aristocrat wanted to have hibiscus in their greenhouse. Because it was impressive, it was expensive, it was a status symbol. But here's the thing. In greenhouses, hibiscuses bloomed all the time because owners could afford heating, humidity, various fertilizers, and constant care. The common people had access to none of this, so hibiscus remained an unreachable dream. But times changed. In the 20th century, with the development of selective breeding, hibiscuses became more adapted to indoor conditions. New varieties appeared that were more hardy, more accommodating, and hibiscus began entering ordinary people's homes. Today, it's one of the most popular houseplants in the world. You can buy it in any flower shop, sometimes even in a supermarket for a pittance. But popularity hasn't solved the main problem. Hibiscus still doesn't want to bloom in our conditions. And this creates a paradox. The more accessible the plant becomes, the more people get disappointed with it. Now let's talk about what history, tradition, and culture say about hibiscus and its blooming. There's a belief that hibiscus is a symbol of death and loss. According to some Asian traditions, if hibiscus blooms in a house, it can foretell misfortune. But it's not like that everywhere. In Hawaii, for example, hibiscus is the national flower, a symbol of beauty and joy. There it's given to brides, used to decorate women's hair at weddings. In India, hibiscus is sacred and dedicated to the goddess Kali. It's used in religious ceremonies and rituals. In Chinese feng shui tradition, hibiscus is recommended to be placed in certain parts of the house to attract love and passion energy. Red hibiscus is considered especially powerful for activating sexual energy. In folk omens of different cultures, flowering hibiscus is often connected with favorable events, weddings, births of children, success in business. Although, as I said, in some cultures it's read the opposite way. But here's what's interesting. Almost all of these beliefs and traditions point to one thing. A blooming hibiscus is considered a significant phenomenon. Rare. Special. It's not just a flower, it's an event. It's a reason to pay attention. It's a sign the world is sending us. Maybe ancient people were closer to the truth than they thought. Maybe they simply noticed that blooming hibiscus was indeed rare, and this entered their cultural memory as something mystical. But now let's move on to science. And this is where things get really interesting, because the scientific explanation for why hibiscus blooms actually confirms the wisdom of ancient traditions, though through a completely different path. Hibiscus is a plant that blooms in response to very specific environmental conditions. It's not a plant that simply, out of goodwill toward you, decides to bloom. No. Blooming for hibiscus is a survival strategy, a biological process connected to reproduction. The plant invests enormous amounts of energy into flowering and subsequent fruit production. So it only does this when environmental conditions signal to it that it's time to reproduce. The main trigger for hibiscus blooming is the difference between daytime and nighttime temperature. This might sound strange, but it's true. In the tropics, where hibiscus evolved over millions of years, nights are indeed noticeably cooler than days. And the plant learned to read this signal. When you keep the plant in a warm apartment where nighttime temperature is almost the same as daytime, the plant thinks, wait, is this eternal day? But if it's eternal day, then there's no rush to reproduce. Life never ends. I can just keep growing and growing. And hibiscus doesn't bloom. The second critically important factor is lighting. Hibiscus needs a very large amount of light. Not just a bright place, but conditions where the plant receives at least 8 hours of direct sunlight daily. In the tropics, the sun is very intense, it shines for long periods, and hibiscus is used to this. If you keep the plant on a window that gets sun for only 2 or 3 hours, that's not enough. The plant is in a state of mild energy hunger, and in such a state it doesn't spend energy on blooming. It survives, it grows, but it doesn't thrive. The third factor is watering. Here begins another interesting story. Hibiscus actually prefers for the soil to dry out slightly between waterings. But not completely. Not to the point of being a desert. Just slightly. When you constantly keep the soil wet, when it never completely dries out, the plant receives a signal. Oh, rainy season. Conditions are good. Life comes easily. But when the soil dries out a bit, when a day or two pass between waterings and the top layer of earth becomes dry to the touch, the plant receives a completely different signal. This is a signal of mild stress, and in response to this stress, the plant activates a survival mechanism that triggers blooming. The fourth factor is nutrients. Hibiscus needs sufficient amounts of phosphorus and potassium to bloom. Phosphorus is responsible for forming flowers, potassium for the plant's strength and energy. If the plant only gets nitrogen, it will grow, new leaves will appear, new shoots will emerge, the plant will get bigger. But there will be no flowers, because the plant perceives excess nitrogen as a signal to actively grow, and it focuses on that, forgetting about reproduction. And finally, the fifth factor, which is often overlooked, is periodic rest. Plants that evolved from the tropics often have internal rhythms connected to seasonal changes. Although the tropics don't have winter in the classical sense, there are wet and dry seasons. Hibiscus remembers this at a genetic level. If you keep the plant in the same conditions 12 months a year, it doesn't get a signal about the need to prepare for blooming. But if you give the plant a period with lower temperature and less water for 2 to 3 months, imitating a dry season, then the plant activates. It understands that changes are coming and begins preparing for reproduction. Here's what's amazing. All these scientific facts, all these biological signals that the plant reads, they correspond exactly to what ancient tradition said. When some Eastern tradition says that a blooming hibiscus is a sign, a rarity, an exception, they were right. They just didn't know why it was rare. They didn't know about phosphorus and temperature differences. But they saw the result. They saw that hibiscus blooms rarely, under special circumstances, and this entered their cultural memory as something mystical. And conversely, when feng shui recommends placing hibiscus in certain places in the house and caring for it with special attention, it's actually indirect advice to provide the plant with good lighting, regular care, and favorable conditions. It's just described through the lens of energy and balance instead of scientific terms. But the essence is one and the same. The thing is, science and tradition approach one phenomenon from different sides. Science asks, why? How does it work? What molecules, what hormones, what chemical reactions are activated? Tradition asks, when? Under what circumstances does this happen? And what does it mean for humans? But both see the same thing, that a blooming hibiscus is an exception. It's the result of the right combination of factors. It's not luck, it's a pattern. Now let's move on to practice. Because knowing the theory is good. But how can you apply this in your home? How can you make your hibiscus finally bloom? Let's start with light, because it's the most important factor, and at the same time the most challenging for most people. Hibiscus doesn't just need a window with sun. It needs a southern or southwest-facing side of the house, a window where the sun shines for at least 8 hours. If you don't have such a window, you'll need to use a grow light. And this isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Such a lamp should be on for at least 8 hours a day, preferably 14. Yes, this will increase your electricity bill, but the result is worth it. If you're not prepared for these expenses, then honestly, hibiscus will be challenging. The second step is temperature regime. In the summer period, hibiscus should be kept at a temperature of 22 to 24 degrees Celsius during the day. At night, the temperature should be noticeably lower, around 17 to 19 degrees. This difference is very important. If your apartment has the same temperature everywhere and always, you need to create this difference artificially. You can move the plant to a balcony or a cool windowsill at night. Or you can simply lower the temperature in the room where hibiscus is kept, if that's technically possible. In winter, and this is a critical moment, hibiscus needs a rest period. From November to February, the temperature should be lower, 18 to 20 degrees during the day, 14 to 16 at night. This is when watering is reduced, fertilizers are barely given, and the plant enters a state resembling hibernation. This isn't the plant dying, it's preparing for spring. Such a rest period lasts 2 to 3 months, and it's absolutely necessary for subsequent active blooming. Now about watering. In summer, when the plant is actively growing and preparing to bloom, it needs frequent watering, but not waterlogging. The soil should be moist, but not oversaturated. How do you know when to water? Touch the soil 2 centimeters deep. If that spot is dry, it's time to water. If it's still moist, wait. Use soft, settled water. Cold tap water can shock the plant. It's better to use room temperature water or slightly warmer. In winter, during the rest period, watering is almost stopped. Water rarely, about once every 2 weeks, and just a little. Just enough so the soil doesn't turn into a hard crust. The goal is to help the plant enter hibernation, not feed it. Soil is also important. Hibiscus needs light, well-draining soil. Not regular universal soil from the store. Mix universal soil with perlite or vermiculite in a 2-to-1 ratio. This will ensure good drainage and air permeability. Hibiscus hates sitting in waterlogged soil. Roots start to rot, the plant gets sick. Fertilizers are where many people make mistakes. In summer, from April to August, hibiscus should be fertilized every 2 weeks. But use fertilizer specifically developed for flowering plants, or fertilizer with high phosphorus and potassium content but low nitrogen. The formula is roughly this: more phosphorus, moderate potassium, less nitrogen. This might look like NPK 5-20-10 or similar proportions. In fall, reduce fertilizers, and in winter, barely give any. Pruning is another important tool. Hibiscus benefits from pruning because it stimulates branching. The more branches, the more points where flowers can appear. Pruning is best done at the end of winter, before active growth begins. Cut branches about a third of their length. It will look like you've damaged the plant, but within weeks, 2 to 3 new branches will grow from each cut. Then in summer, all these branches will bloom. Air humidity is also an important factor. Hibiscus comes from humid tropics, so it prefers humidity at 50 to 60%. If your apartment is very dry, especially in winter when heating is on, mist the plant with water from a spray bottle. This doesn't replace watering, but it will help the plant feel more comfortable. The pot should be the right size. Not too big, not too small. The plant should fit in the pot, so there's 2 to 3 centimeters between the soil's edge and the pot's edge. If the pot is too big, water will stagnate in the soil and roots will rot. If the pot is too small, the plant will suffer from lack of space for roots. Now about typical mistakes. First mistake: too much water. This kills more hibiscuses than any other factor. People think that if a plant is tropical, you need to constantly wet it. That's not true. Hibiscus prefers to be slightly dried out between waterings. Second mistake: lack of light. If the plant is on a north-facing window or deep in the room, it won't bloom. Third mistake: keeping the plant in the same temperature conditions year-round. Without a rest period in winter, blooming is impossible. Fourth mistake: wrong fertilizers. If you give the plant regular universal fertilizer high in nitrogen, you're feeding leaves, not flowers. Fifth mistake: ignoring pruning. Without pruning, you leave the plant with one trunk and a few branches. Where would flowers come from? One more important detail: acclimation. When you buy hibiscus from a shop, it's used to certain conditions. Maybe it was under special lamps, it was given certain fertilizers, it was kept at a certain temperature. When you bring it home, the plant experiences shock. Lighting, temperature, humidity all change suddenly, and it drops its flowers. This doesn't mean the plant is dying, it's just its natural reaction to stress. To minimize the shock, don't rush to put the plant in a different pot. Give it a week or 2 to acclimate. Place it where you plan to keep it. Don't change conditions abruptly. Then, when the plant settles, you can repot it if necessary. And here we approach the end of our story, because the story of hibiscus is actually a story about something deeper. It's a story that nothing in this world happens by accident. Hibiscus blooming isn't magic. It's not your neighbor's luck. It's not the plant being temperamental. It's a result. The result of creating the right conditions, of understanding what the plant wants, and of being willing to give it that. Every hibiscus flower that blooms in your home is a small victory. It's proof that you learned to listen to the plant, understand its language, speak to it in its language. It's confirmation that all your efforts, all your attention, all your patience had meaning. The plant responded to you in kind, trusted you, and maybe this is what those signs and favorable conditions that ancient traditions talked about really are. Maybe they knew that a flowering plant is the result of harmony between humans and nature. That when humans respect nature, when they study it, when they're willing to adapt to it, then nature responds with beauty. And this beauty isn't accidental, it's earned. So if you have a hibiscus at home and it's not blooming yet, don't despair. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a story you're creating with this plant. The beginning of your journey into the world of indoor gardening. Because once you make hibiscus bloom, you'll understand you're capable of much. And this will open the entire world of plants for you. If this video helped you understand the secret of hibiscus, if you learned something new, please give it a like. This will help the video reach other people who also dream of seeing their hibiscus bloom. Subscribe to the channel because ahead there are many other secrets, many other mysteries that the plant world holds. And write in the comments, does your hibiscus bloom? If yes, tell us what secret you managed to find. If no, tell us what you'll try to do first after watching this video. Let's unravel these green mysteries together. Thank you for being with me, and I'll see you soon.